I've always had a fascination with small, out-of-the-way countries. The kind of places that seem almost mythical, hidden away from the rest of the world, their names spoken with a mix of curiosity and confusion. That's what drew me to Andorra, a tiny nation tucked between France and Spain, nestled high in the Pyrenees Mountains. I'd read about its beautiful landscapes, ski resorts, and quaint villages, and I thought it would be the perfect spot for a quiet vacation. But what happened there was anything but quiet, and I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it. It was late autumn when I arrived in Andorra. The air was crisp and cool, and the leaves had just begun to turn, painting the hillsides in shades of orange and gold. I'd booked a small cabin in a village called Sant-Jaume, which was supposed to be far off the beaten path, perfect for someone like me who wanted to escape the chaos of city life for a while. The drive there was stunning, with winding roads that twisted through the mountains, offering breathtaking views of valleys and peaks. But as I got closer to Sant-Jaume, something felt off. The road became narrower, the trees denser, and the clouds overhead seemed to darken, even though it was still early afternoon. There were no signs, no markers to indicate how far the village was, and I started to wonder if I'd taken a wrong turn somewhere. But then I saw it, a small, wooden sign half hidden by weeds, with the words Sant-Jaume painted on it in faded, peeling letters. An arrow pointed down a narrow dirt road, barely wide enough for my car. I hesitated for a moment, then turned down the road, figuring I'd come this far, and I might as well see where it led. The village was different from what I'd expected. I'd pictured a charming, picturesque place with cozy cottages and friendly locals, but Sant-Jaume was almost completely deserted. The houses were old and weathered, their shutters hanging crooked, their paint peeling. There were no cars, no people walking around, just silence. I parked my car near what looked like the village square, a small, cobblestone plaza with a stone fountain in the center. The water wasn't running, and the basin was dry, with dead leaves collected at the bottom. I glanced around, hoping to see anyone, but there was no one there. It was eerie, but I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just a quiet village, or maybe most of the residents had left for the season. I grabbed my bag and headed toward the cabin I'd rented, which was supposed to be at the far end of the village, near the edge of the forest. As I walked through the village, I noticed more strange things. The windows of the houses were dark, but I felt like I was being watched, like there were eyes following me from behind the curtains. I could see faint, shadowy movements inside, but every time I looked directly at a window, the shadows would disappear. I finally reached the cabin, which looked just as old and worn as the rest of the village. There was no one there to greet me, no one to hand me the keys, but the door was unlocked, and when I stepped inside, I found the key hanging on a hook by the door. The interior was surprisingly clean, with a small kitchen, a fireplace, and a single bedroom. It was cozy, almost too cozy, like someone had just been there, waiting for me to arrive. I dropped my bag and decided to take a walk around the village before it got dark. I figured I'd find someone, maybe ask where the nearest grocery store was, or get some information about the area. But as I walked, the sense of unease grew stronger. The streets were empty, the houses silent, and I still couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I wandered for a while, trying to make sense of the village's layout, but it seemed to shift and change around me. I'd turn a corner and find myself back where I started, or walk down a street only to realize it led nowhere. I tried to find the road I'd driven in on, but it was gone, swallowed up by the dense trees that seemed to creep closer, inching toward the village like dark, skeletal fingers. As the sun began to set, I decided to head back to the cabin, but I couldn't find it. I was sure I'd been walking in the right direction, but every turn led me somewhere else, to a part of the village I hadn't seen before. The sky grew darker, and a thick fog began to roll in, obscuring everything around me. That's when I heard it, a faint, whispering sound, like voices carried on the wind. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but they were close, too close, and they were getting louder. I started to panic, my heart racing, and I broke into a run, hoping to find the cabin or the car or anything familiar. But the fog grew thicker, and the voices grew louder, until they were all around me, whispering, chanting, a strange, rhythmic murmur that made my skin crawl. I stumbled through the fog, my breath coming in ragged gasps, until I saw a light flickering in the distance. I ran toward it, desperate, and found myself back in the village square, standing in front of the old fountain. The light was coming from one of the houses, a faint, yellow glow seeping through the cracks in the shutters. I hesitated, but I had no other options, so I walked up to the house and knocked on the door. The door creaked open, and an old woman stood there, her face hidden in the shadows. She was small, hunched over, with wispy white hair that fell around her shoulders. She looked up at me with pale, watery eyes and smiled, a thin, crooked smile that sent a chill down my spine. "You're lost," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. I'm looking for my cabin," I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can't find it." She just nodded, as if she'd been expecting me, and stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. I hesitated, but the fog was thickening, and the whispers were still there, just beyond the edge of the light, so I stepped inside. The house was dark and cold, the air heavy with the smell of damp earth. The old woman led me to a small room at the back, where a single candle flickered on a wooden table. There was a map spread out on the table, a map of the village, but it was different from any map I'd seen before. The streets were twisted, looping in on themselves, and there were strange symbols drawn in the margins, symbols I didn't recognize. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice barely audible. "This place isn't for you." I didn't know what to say. I was scared, confused, and I just wanted to go home. "I don't understand," I said. "I just need to find my way out." The old woman looked at me for a long moment, then pointed to one of the symbols on the map. "This is a place of passage," she said. "A place between worlds. Those who enter can't leave. Not unless they're chosen." I didn't understand what she meant, but I could see the fear in her eyes, and it terrified me. "Chosen for what?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "To stay," she said, her lips curling into that same crooked smile. "To become part of the village." The candle flickered, and for a moment, I saw something in the shadows behind her. Dark, twisted shapes moving, shifting, like figures trapped in a fog. I blinked, and they were gone, but the fear remained, a cold, gnawing dread that made it hard to breathe. "I don't want to stay," I said, my voice trembling. "I just want to leave." The old woman sighed, almost as if she was disappointed, and blew out the candle. The room was plunged into darkness, and I felt something brush against my arm, something cold and slimy. I recoiled, stumbling back, and heard her voice, soft and distant, like a whisper carried on the wind. "Then you shouldn't have come here." I don't remember much after that. I must have passed out, or maybe I just ran. But when I woke up, I was lying in the village square, the fog lifting, the first rays of dawn breaking through the clouds. The village was still there, still silent, but the feeling of being watched was gone, and the whispers had faded. I stumbled back to the cabin, found my car, and drove away without looking back. The road was clear now, and I didn't stop until I was back in the main town, far from Saint-Jean. I wanted to forget everything, to convince myself that it had all been a bad dream, but I couldn't. A few days later, I tried to find the village on a map, but it wasn't there. I asked around, but no one had ever heard of Saint-Jean. It was as if the village had never existed. But I know what I saw, and I know that somewhere, high in the mountains, there's a place that shouldn't be. A place where the fog never lifts and the whispers never stop. And if you ever find yourself driving through the Pyrenees and you see a small, wooden sign pointing down a narrow dirt road, do yourself a favor. Keep driving.